Hey, what's up everybody? For this study guide worksheet that's homework tonight for quiz, I decided to go over the growth rates to growth factors and growth factors back to growth rates. We discussed today that some exponential growth problems are going to give us a percentage, and they're going to say that a certain relationship increases by 56%. And what we need to do is we need to be able to convert this percentage, which we call a growth rate, into a growth factor, which is a number that we can multiply our values by in order to get the following value. For example, if we wanted to make a table, we would need a growth factor to multiply each value with to get the next value on the table. So what we need to do is we need to say, if they tell us that something grows by 56%, what is the corresponding growth factor? And the way we do that is two steps. The first is we need to convert this to a decimal. In order to convert it to a decimal, we find where the decimal place is. If we don't see one, it's always at the end. So in this case, it's after the 6. And we're going to move this decimal 2 spots to the left. One spot ends up between 5 and 6, and 2 spots lands the decimal point right in front of the 5. So this thing in decimal form is 0.56. Now, we're not done. That's not the growth rate. It's not the growth factor. In order to make it a growth factor, we need to add 1.00. We always add 1 when we're creating a growth factor. So, then we draw the line at the bottom and add 6 plus 0 is 6, 5 plus 0 is 5, carry the decimal point down, and we get 1.56. I realize that that's difficult to see, but that's how we convert from a growth rate to a growth factor. So 1.56 is the corresponding growth factor. Quickly looking at going the other way, when we have a growth factor and we need to find a growth rate, we do the exact opposite. The first thing we do is subtract 1, because over here we added 1 to create a growth factor. So I'm going to subtract 1.0. That's going to give me 2.4. And then we need to take that number and turn it back into a percentage. The way we do that is moving the decimal point 2 spots to the right. So I take this, I move it 1 spot, it lands on the other side of the 4. Another spot lands me out here somewhere. And this awkward gap needs to be filled with a 0. If there's no number in the gap, you need to fill it with a 0. So what that leaves us with is 240%. So by subtracting 1 and converting it from a decimal back to a percentage, I've turned a growth factor into a growth rate. This thing must be growing at a rate of 240% every time the x value goes up. Hope it helps. We'll see you tomorrow in class.